All right, so if you are like me and you find watercolor flowers a big challenge, then stick around. I'm going to show you how I really kind of loosened up with this cherry blossom this time. And if you want to check out more flowers, because they are my nemesis, I tried a 7-day challenge last year, and I'll have the link up here above for you. If you guys want to follow that, you can do 7 flowers in 7 days. But I just decided I really wanted to do something very loose, very watery, and I was not going to get bogged down with lots of details. So I found the original photograph on unsplash.com, and I looked at a bunch of different ones for cherry blossoms, and I knew I didn't want to get super detailed because I wanted to make this really light and airy. So I kind of mixed up a few different ones, but this is probably the one that really stuck out to me at first because I liked the background of it. So I have added this link down below in the description box if you want to click on it and print it off for yourself. So I sketched it in really lightly. I started getting a little too detailed and I was like, back it up, Kelly. I don't want to have too much going on in here. So I started with, all of that, all the centers, and I was drawing the whole thing in there. So then I decided, okay, just put the couple of stems in here, a couple of branches, and we want this very loose. And they're really like a light pink, almost transparent type of flower. So again, I didn't want to have a whole lot in here, so we're going to try to do this fairly quickly. So I sketched it out, and I did want to put one little bud that was the blossoming. My tree is about ready to start blossoming. We're here in Maine, so things are a little slower here on the East Coast, way up here. This is what it looks like right now. I've got my little lights out here and stuff too. But it's going to be absolutely beautiful. I have a picture, I think, from last year, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I also will have a PDF printable for you if you want to print this out, trace it, and follow along. All right, and usually I'm using my little pan paints, but today I'm going to use my artist quality paints. I figured with having it in the tube form, I can really quickly mix up the colors that I want. So for colors, what I'm going to use are cerulean blue, Winsor yellow, permanent sap green, permanent rose, permanent alizarin crimson, and Winsor violet. And also using Arches 100% cotton paper. And for a brush, I'm decided to go with a big brush. This is the Big Daddy. It's a size 18 Da Vinci Cosmo Top. Mix B is the name of it. And I think my husband got me this one in a little kit of, I think there was 5 different brushes in there. I'll try to find it for you. If I can find the link, I'll put it in my Amazon shop along with the paper that I'm using. So I am going to just wet my paper. I have put in some of that beautiful rose and a little bit of the cerulean blue in here and just kind of dabbing it in. It's kind of that muted background, a very light purple. When I started painting this, it was like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. And you've already heard me talk about flowers and how they're my nemesis. So I did the background first. I figured backgrounds are always safe, right? So my muted background, I love the way that the rose and that blue, cerulean blue, made that really nice light lavender shade. So I went with that, just kind of rolling it around those petals. And because I want to leave those petals more transparent or translucent, you're going to be able to see some of those colors through there. I'm just kind of working my way around using now the tip of the brush. Again, it's a big brush. It's a size 18. It's going to cover that paper a lot faster than what I usually use, which is usually a small oval wash, like a 1/2-inch oval wash in my little tiny detail pen. So, using a larger brush makes it much easier for me to be loose with my painting. And if you've watched most of my paintings, they're not usually very loose. I tend to paint very tight, lots of details, and that comes from my background with working with a lot of seascapes and landscapes, I guess. So I'm going in now with just the tip of that brush, just creating those little shapes of petals. Try not to touch too much of that background that I just did. And I'm just layering in some color here and there on those petals. I want it quite watery, so I added a little bit more water to my brush. Again, trying to keep this loose, so it's like I'm not painting every single petal on here. It's just about plopping in some pink here and there, and we're going to blend some of it. We want to keep it nice and light, and I did draw in where the centers of those flowers are, so that's going to be the part that gives me my details. It's just the center of those. So keeping everything else nice and light, very watery. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that pink. I want a little bit more vibrant in here. Again, just popping it in there. Taking a couple of brush strokes. Now this is a 9x12, so it's pretty good size. I'm often painting with 5x7s a lot because I like painting smaller and I like painting tiny. And, selling my work at the airport and on Etsy, it's easy to ship and I have a small space. So living here at the lake house with my painting area upstairs so I can see the water, I don't have a lot of storage area. So painting small for me works. So I'm, again, just popping in some darker values in here because that pink is so light. And I have just that little bit of blue, just a touch of blue in here. Take my tissue, just dabbing out a little bit. I had like that blurred kind of background in that photograph. So by just tapping in the tissue and lifting up some of that paint, I'm getting some nice little lighter spots. I don't want too much here. There we go. Again, just create some little texture in there. Gives it that softer appearance. Again, I like that brighter shade, just putting in a few little marks here and there. Now you can do this when it's all wet, because it's all just wet into wet. So very easy to do. You see where it's dried a little bit because I used that tissue down here. So I'm just kind of working my way around it. Not sure if I want to leave that space there or not. Liking the purple, putting a little bit more purple in. When artists talk about the feeling of a painting, it's kind of what I'm doing now. It's just, do I like that? Do I want to add more to it? Do I not? So I did like it. I left it and I dried it. And you can see it's dried a lot lighter. So now I'm going into the purple or the Windsor Violet. And I'm adding a little bit of green. I have this quite watery here. I want to make my own little brown shade. I add a little bit of that alizarin crimson to that too. Or that might be permanent rose. And I want it like a kind of a grayish purple brown. I don't know what I was going for. I wanted to kind of keep it in that same value. I don't want it too dark. So it's got a little bit of purple in it. And I'm just going to go lightly with the branches. I have switched my pen to a nice liner, or my brush, not my pen. I'm just getting a very light wash here on those branches that we painted in. I love the liners, and you can see when I'm making those branches, the liner works great because it's wiggly. It's like a branch. I'm using just the tip of it, and it's not a perfectly straight line. Just think about it. Branches are not straight. Again, mixing a little bit more brown with that green and the red. Makes a lovely brown. And I'm just going to thicken that branch up a little bit. Now these are still quite light, so I will be making another go at this. Maybe some little tips for the buds, where they're kind of popping out here and there. You can also tell that those colors are not the same. When I mix the color, I'm constantly mixing the color and it's changing the color. So they're not all the same color anymore. So I'd like to have a little bit of difference in them because the light's going to be hitting them differently. When you look at a branch, there's all kinds of colors in there. They're just not solid brown. And I may add a few more branches to this. We go back to the purple. I like those purple shades, purples and greens. Now you can see I have a little bit more paint on this one, less water, so it's going to be a little darker. I'm just going to tap the underneath of these branches now. Remember, where there's light, there's dark. So and the underneath of this branch is not going to get as much light. So it will be a little darker. And now I'm going to wet those areas. I'm going to place some green and some yellow into. Being careful not to hit where that brown is. And just a little shape of a leaf. There's not a whole lot of details in here. And I'm going to use some of the opera rose for the bud. Yeah, touch of yellow to brighten that up a little bit. It's almost giving it like that orange glow. And I'm going to lift some of that out. I just felt I had too much in there. And I want a little softer pink on the upper side. There, a little bud. And the bud is like kind of opening a little bit. So I'm just creating a couple little marks in here. And again, I want it a little darker underneath, maybe where that little stem is coming. I think I need a little bit lighter shade, so let's make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to take a little bit of that pink and just drag it across the top here. There we go. Just need a little tiny bit more. And then for the leaves, I'm just going to add a little bit of that brown in here just to darken some of that. It's like these little leaves are just coming out of their little spot and they're all curling around. And now I'm going to go in with the upper rose and just add some darker values now to just a few of these petals. Like I said, I don't want to get too detailed. So this is, I mean, I can't tell where one petal ends and one begins. It's just about, finding a couple little spots and shaping up a few of those petals, just using the little bit of pencil marks that I had on the underneath. And I'm softening those up a little bit because I don't want that real dramatic line in all of there. So just a little bit of water and you can soften those lines up a little bit. And then in the middle here, I'm just going to make a few dots, little marks. And I'm just trying to find some of those little areas that I had drawn out. These flowers are all turned different ways. They're just coming out. So the great thing about this one is you don't have to, be able to draw this perfect flower. It's just a little bit of an illusion here. So if you make just a few of these little marks and bring your little petals down on a couple of them, give them a little bit more dimension, your eyes really will fill in the rest. Ooh, that one's a little dark. I'm going to have to lighten that one up a little bit. Adding just some fresh water to it and softening those up a little bit. And a couple more in behind. So these petals are almost translucent where that white is showing. So I'm not going to paint in all of those. Again, just softening a few of them, just a few extra little marks here and there. And now I'm going to go back in and just do a little bit more detailing here on that bud. Give you a really nice close-up of this one. And just a couple little marks to give it a little more texture in there. I'm going to rinse off the brush and then we're going to go into just a few darker values here inside. So I don't want that to be all bright yellow. Again, just dotting a couple little spots real close here so you can see what I'm doing. They have like these little stamens almost in there, and then they have these little dots. So I'm going to go back in. This is like a purpley brown shade, and I'm just going to dot in there. Now, some of that yellow is not completely dry, but that's okay. Or the green. It's very watery, so some of that's going to just blend naturally in here. Yeah, just tapping a few of them. A little pollen here and there. A couple little marks. Again, not doing a whole lot of details. It's going to be mostly an illusion. And then I am going to sharpen up with a little bit darker value on the underneath of some of my little stems that I have. So I go through a couple of them. You can kind of neaten them up a little bit if you find that these ones were pretty loose to begin with. Nice dark edges, a couple little dots here and there for those to be growing out. And then I've got some white gouache. It almost looks silver here, but it's white. I'm going to tap that across the top just to give a little bit of a highlight across some of those little branches. And you can see how that gives it a little bit more dimension. Again, I don't want to get too detailed, so I'm going to stop at that point, just getting a couple more branches to give some highlights. And here's the finished piece. So again, it doesn't have to be super difficult. You could go very loosely. I started at the end there to get a few more details in there where I had to back myself up. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for new stuff coming up, and I'll give you that link for some more flowers if you want to go ahead and give some others. I got some lilacs, some daisies, and some other things available that you can follow along with. Take care.